What if everything you've been taught about changing your reality is backwards? What if the very act of trying to fix, improve, or transcend your current circumstances is the one thing keeping you trapped in cycles of limitation and spiritual stagnation? Carl Jung, the pioneering depth psychologist who dared to explore the forbidden territories of human consciousness, discovered a truth so profound that it challenges the foundation of every self-help teaching and spiritual practice you've ever encountered. This isn't about positive thinking, manifestation techniques, or rising above your problems through spiritual bypassing. This is about recognizing the invisible psychological mechanism that creates your reality from the inside out, operating beneath your conscious awareness like a hidden puppet master, pulling the strings of every experience you attract. Jung spent decades studying the mysterious forces that govern human behavior and spiritual transformation, uncovering ancient wisdom that had been lost to modern consciousness but preserved in the symbols, myths, and sacred practices of initiated beings throughout history. What he discovered was that reality itself is a projection of unconscious content, meaning that what you perceive as external circumstances are actually reflections of internal psychological patterns that most people never even realize exist. The moment you understand this principle and learn to work with it consciously, you gain access to the same creative forces that mystics and shamans have used for millennia to shape reality according to conscious intention rather than unconscious programming. Through his groundbreaking work with shadow integration, archetypal consciousness, and the transcendent function, Jung revealed practical methods for accessing the hidden dimensions of psyche where real transformation occurs. This isn't surface-level personal development, but deep structural change that addresses the root causes of why your life keeps repeating the same patterns, regardless of how hard you try to change your external circumstances. You'll discover how projection creates your reality, why shadow work is the key to instant transformation, and how to break free from collective unconscious programming that keeps most people trapped in cycles of limitation. The insights you're about to encounter will challenge everything you believe about personal power, spiritual development, and the nature of reality itself, offering you a roadmap to the kind of transformation that happens not through years of struggle and effort, but through the profound recognition of what you must stop doing right now. This ancient knowledge, hidden within the depths of analytical psychology, contains the keys to instant reality shifts that most people spend their entire lives seeking but never find. Most people live their entire lives without realizing they're trapped in a prison of their own making, one constructed not by external circumstances, but by the unconscious projections that color every experience they encounter. Carl Jung discovered that what we perceive as reality is actually a complex tapestry woven from our deepest unconscious contents, projected outward onto the world like shadows dancing on a cave wall. This hidden mechanism operates beneath the threshold of awareness, silently shaping every relationship, every opportunity, and every limitation we believe defines our existence. The moment you understand this profound truth, you hold the master key to instant reality transformation, because what you've been seeking to change out there has always been an inside job. When Jung worked with his patients, he noticed a peculiar phenomenon that would revolutionize our understanding of human psychology and spiritual awakening. People consistently attracted experiences that mirrored their unconscious complexes, unresolved traumas, and denied aspects of their personality with uncanny precision. A person who unconsciously harbored deep feelings of unworthiness would repeatedly find themselves in situations that confirmed this hidden belief, while someone carrying repressed anger would mysteriously encounter aggressive people everywhere they went. This wasn't mere coincidence or bad luck, but the psyche's attempt to bring unconscious content into conscious awareness through the vehicle of external experience. The universe becomes a mirror, reflecting back to us exactly what needs to be integrated and healed within our own depths. The most extraordinary aspect of this discovery lies in its immediate practical application for those seeking rapid personal transformation and spiritual liberation. Jung realized that the moment we withdraw our projections and recognize that the external world serves as a reflection of our internal state, we reclaim tremendous personal power that was previously scattered across countless external circumstances and relationships. Instead of trying to manipulate, control, or escape from challenging situations, we can turn our attention inward to address the unconscious source that's creating these experiences in the first place. This represents a fundamental shift from victim consciousness to creator consciousness, from manipulation to manifestation, from seeking salvation outside ourselves to recognizing our inherent capacity for reality creation. What makes this principle so potent for instant transformation is that projection operates in real time, meaning that as soon as you shift your internal state, your external experience begins to shift accordingly. Jung observed that patients who successfully integrated their shadow aspects would suddenly find that the difficult people in their lives either disappeared or dramatically changed their behavior, not because Jung's patients had manipulated anyone, but because they were no longer unconsciously attracting and creating those dynamics. This ancient wisdom, hidden within the depths of analytical psychology, reveals that the one thing you must stop doing to shift reality instantly is the shadow represents everything about ourselves that we've deemed unacceptable, shameful, or incompatible with our idealized self-image. Yet this rejected material holds the very keys to our liberation and authentic power. Jung understood that what we resist in ourselves doesn't simply disappear, but becomes an autonomous force within the psyche, operating from the darkness and sabotaging our conscious intentions through unconscious behaviors, self-defeating patterns, and mysterious attractions to people who embody our disowned qualities. Every spiritual tradition throughout history has recognized this fundamental truth. That which we deny in ourselves will control us from the shadows until we have the courage to face it directly. The path to instant reality shifts lies not in transcending our darkness, but in consciously integrating it, transforming poison into medicine through the alchemical process of conscious acknowledgement and acceptance. Most people spend enormous amounts of energy maintaining their persona, the mask they present to the world, while simultaneously fighting an invisible war against their own shadow content. This internal conflict creates a state of psychological fragmentation that manifests as external chaos, repeated patterns of self-sabotage, and the strange phenomenon of attracting exactly what we claim to want to avoid. Jung discovered that the shadow contains not only our perceived negative qualities, but also our unlived potential, our suppressed creativity, and the raw, authentic power that we've sacrificed in order to fit into social expectations and family dynamics. When we courageously turn toward our shadow instead of away from it, we begin to reclaim the vital energy that was previously locked up in maintaining psychological defenses and internal resistance. The process of shadow integration represents one of the most direct paths to spiritual awakening and energetic healing available to the modern seeker of forbidden knowledge and ancient wisdom. Unlike surface-level positive thinking or visualization techniques, shadow work addresses the root cause of why our manifestation attempts often fail or create unintended consequences. Every unintegrated shadow aspect carries a specific frequency that continues to broadcast into the quantum field, attracting experiences that match its vibrational signature, regardless of our conscious desires or affirmations. By bringing these unconscious patterns into the light of awareness, we stop unconsciously creating what we consciously want to avoid, freeing up tremendous creative energy for deliberate reality creation and spiritual transformation. What Jung discovered about shadow integration challenges everything we've been taught about spiritual development and personal growth. The path to enlightenment doesn't require becoming perfect or transcending our humanity, but rather embracing the totality of who we are with radical acceptance and compassion. When we stop rejecting parts of ourselves, we stop unconsciously creating external situations that force us to confront these aspects through projection and conflict. This shift from internal warfare to internal integration creates an immediate transformation in our external experience, as the energy previously spent on psychological resistance becomes available for conscious creation and authentic self-expression. The shadow holds the secret to. The shadow represents everything about ourselves that we've deemed unacceptable, shameful, or incompatible with our idealized self-image. Yet this rejected material holds the very keys to our liberation and authentic power. Jung understood that what we resist in ourselves doesn't simply disappear, but becomes an autonomous force within the psyche, operating from the darkness and sabotaging our conscious intentions through unconscious behaviors, self-defeating patterns, and mysterious attractions to people who embody our disowned qualities. Every spiritual tradition throughout history has recognized this fundamental truth: that which we deny in ourselves will control us from the shadows until we have the courage to face it directly. The path to instant reality shifts lies not in transcending our darkness, but in consciously integrating it, transforming poison into medicine through the alchemical process of conscious acknowledgement and acceptance. Most people spend enormous amounts of energy maintaining their persona, the mask they present to the world, while simultaneously fighting an invisible war against their own shadow content. This internal conflict creates a state of psychological fragmentation that manifests as external chaos, repeated patterns of self-sabotage, and the strange phenomenon of attracting exactly what we claim to want to avoid. Jung discovered that the shadow contains not only our perceived negative qualities, but also our unlived potential, our suppressed creativity, and the raw, authentic power that we've sacrificed in order to fit into social expectations and family dynamics. When we courageously turn toward our shadow instead of away from it, we begin to reclaim the vital energy that was previously locked up in maintaining psychological defenses and internal resistance. The process of shadow integration represents one of the most direct paths to spiritual awakening and energetic healing available to the modern seeker of forbidden knowledge and ancient wisdom. Unlike surface-level positive thinking or visualization techniques, shadow work addresses the root cause of why our manifestation attempts often fail or create unintended consequences. Every unintegrated shadow aspect carries a specific frequency that continues to broadcast into the quantum field, attracting experiences that match its vibrational signature regardless of our conscious desires or affirmations. By bringing these unconscious patterns into the light of awareness, we stop unconsciously creating what we consciously want to avoid, freeing up tremendous creative energy for deliberate reality creation and spiritual transformation. What Jung discovered about shadow integration challenges. Everything we've been taught about spiritual development and personal growth. The path to enlightenment doesn't require becoming perfect or transcending our humanity, but rather embracing the totality of who we are with radical acceptance and compassion. When we stop rejecting parts of ourselves, we stop unconsciously, creating external situations that force us to confront these aspects through projection and conflict. This shift from internal warfare to internal integration creates an immediate transformation in our external experience, as the energy previously spent on psychological resistance becomes available for conscious creation and authentic self-expression. The shadow holds the secret to unlocking the collective unconscious programming that keeps most people trapped in cycles of limitation and spiritual stagnation. Within the depths of human consciousness lies a vast reservoir of inherited patterns, beliefs and archetypal energies that Jung termed the collective unconscious, a hidden dimension where the programming of entire civilizations continues to influence individual behavior and reality creation. This invisible realm contains not only the accumulated wisdom of our ancestors, but also their fears, limitations, and unresolved traumas, creating energetic implants that can hijack personal transformation efforts and keep seekers trapped in cycles of collective limitation. Most people remain completely unaware that their thoughts, desires, and life experiences are being shaped by these ancient frequencies, believing their choices to be entirely their own while unknowingly dancing to the rhythm of inherited patterns that may be thousands of years old. The moment you recognize these collective influences and learn to distinguish between your authentic inner voice and the chorus of ancestral conditioning, you gain access to a level of spiritual liberation that few have ever experienced. The collective unconscious operates like a vast energetic internet, connecting every human being through shared archetypal experiences and mythological patterns that transcend individual consciousness. Jung realized that certain symbols, dreams, and behavioral patterns appeared across all cultures and historical periods, suggesting that we inherit not only genetic material from our ancestors, but also their psychological and spiritual content. This inheritance includes both the highest potentials of human consciousness and the deepest wounds of collective trauma, creating a complex web of influences that can either support or sabotage individual awakening depending on our level of awareness. Sacred geometry, mystical codes, and ancient initiations were designed by evolved beings to help individuals navigate these collective waters and establish sovereign connection to universal consciousness beyond the limitations of inherited programming. Breaking free from collective unconscious programming requires developing what Jung called conscious discrimination, the ability to observe which thoughts, emotions, and impulses arise from authentic personal truth versus those that originate from collective conditioning or manipulated belief systems. This process involves recognizing how religious institutions, educational systems, and social structures have created veils of illusion that keep individuals disconnected from their innate spiritual power and dependent on external authorities for guidance and validation. The hidden agendas embedded within collective programming are designed to suppress individual awakening and maintain systems of control that benefit those who understand how to manipulate collective consciousness for personal gain. Ancient wisdom traditions understood these dynamics and developed specific practices for achieving spiritual liberation from collective influence while still honoring the positive aspects of cultural inheritance. The path to freedom from collective, unconscious programming involves cultivating direct personal relationship with universal consciousness that bypasses inherited filters and conditioning patterns. Jung discovered that certain individuals could access what he called the transcendent function, a bridge between conscious and unconscious realms that allows for creative solutions beyond the limitations of collective thinking. This represents a form of quantum spirituality where consciousness operates according to higher dimensional principles rather than three-dimensional cause and effect logic. When you successfully establish this direct connection, you begin to receive guidance and insights that come from your authentic spiritual essence rather than from the accumulated beliefs and expectations of collective consciousness. This shift opens doorways to understanding how the anima and animus, the inner masculine and feminine principles, serve as deep within every human psyche exists a profound mystery that Jung identified as the anima and animus, the contrasexual, archetypes that represent the inner feminine within men and the inner masculine within women, creating an internal dynamic that secretly orchestrates every significant relationship and attraction we experience throughout our lives. These powerful archetypal forces operate as invisible magnets, drawing us towards specific people who embody the qualities of our unlived inner nature, creating relationships that serve as mirrors for our own psychological development and spiritual evolution. What most people experience as romantic attraction, friendship compatibility, or even intense conflict with others is actually the psyche's attempt to encounter and integrate these internal archetypal energies through external relationship dynamics. Understanding this hidden mechanism provides the key to transforming relationships from sources of drama and dependency into vehicles for mutual awakening and conscious evolution. The anima represents far more than simple feminine qualities within the male psyche. It embodies the bridge between conscious awareness and the mysterious depths of the unconscious, serving as a guide to the soul's deepest wisdom and creative potential. When a man projects his anima onto external women, he becomes dependent on feminine energy outside himself to feel complete, creative, or spiritually connected, creating relationships characterized by idealization, disappointment, and unconscious manipulation. Similarly, the animus within women represents not just masculine qualities, but the capacity for focused will, spiritual discrimination, and conscious penetration into higher dimensions of reality. Women who haven't integrated their animus often project this energy onto men, seeking external masculine energy to feel empowered, protected, or spiritually guided, resulting in codependent dynamics that prevent authentic intimacy and mutual growth. Jung discovered that every projection of anima or animus energy creates what he called a participation mystique, a psychological fusion where individuals lose conscious boundaries and become entangled in unconscious identity confusion with their partners. This phenomenon explains why people often lose themselves in relationships, adopting the interests, values, and even personality traits of their romantic partners, while simultaneously expecting their partners to fulfill impossible archetypal roles. The energetic entanglement created by these projections can persist for years or even decades after relationships end, creating invisible cords that drain vital energy and prevent both individuals from achieving spiritual independence and authentic self-realization. Breaking free from these energetic entanglements requires conscious recognition of projections and deliberate integration of the projected qualities within one's own psyche. The path to authentic relationship and spiritual liberation involves withdrawing these archetypal projections and cultivating conscious relationship with the anima and animus as internal guides and allies, rather than seeking to encounter them through external partners. This process represents a form of inner alchemy, where the individual learns to access both masculine and feminine principles within their own consciousness, creating internal wholeness that naturally attracts healthy, conscious relationships. Based on mutual recognition rather than unconscious projection and dependency, when you successfully integrate these internal archetypal energies, your external relationships transform from unconscious reenactments of parental dynamics and collective romantic programming into conscious partnerships that support spiritual growth and creative collaboration. This inner marriage of opposites opens the doorway to understanding how archetypal patterns operate as both prisons and gateways to. Hidden within the architecture of human consciousness lie ancient archetypal patterns that function as invisible templates, shaping our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors according to primordial blueprints that have governed human experience for millennia. Jung recognized that these archetypal energies operate as autonomous complexes within the psyche, creating repetitive life patterns and relationship dynamics that seem to happen to us rather than being consciously chosen or created. The hero's journey, the victim-persecutor-rescuer triangle, the mother and father complexes, and countless other archetypal configurations continue to run like background software programs, automatically generating experiences that match their specific energetic signatures. Most people remain completely unconscious of these patterns, experiencing their lives as a series of random events and circumstances, while unknowingly following archetypal scripts that were written thousands of years ago. These archetypal patterns possess tremendous creative power, capable of generating entire life narratives and relationship dynamics that can span decades or even entire lifetimes. When someone becomes identified with a particular archetype, such as the wounded healer, the eternal child, or the martyr, they unconsciously attract people and situations that support and reinforce this archetypal role, creating what appears to be fate, but is actually the result of unconscious archetypal activation. The hero archetype, for example, compels individuals to seek challenges, enemies, and quests that allow them to experience the drama of struggle and eventual triumph, often creating unnecessary conflict and hardship in pursuit of archetypal fulfillment. Understanding these patterns allows us to recognize when we're being driven by archetypal energies, rather than making conscious choices based on present moment awareness and authentic desire. The key to freedom from limiting archetypal patterns lies in developing what Jung called archetypal consciousness, the ability to work with these powerful energies as allies and creative forces rather than being unconsciously possessed by them. Ancient wisdom traditions understood this principle and developed specific practices for consciously invoking beneficial archetypes while avoiding identification with limiting ones. Sacred rituals, ceremonial magic, and initiatory practices were designed to help individuals access archetypal power while maintaining sovereign consciousness, preventing the loss of personal identity that occurs when someone becomes possessed by an archetypal complex. This represents a form of spiritual technology that allows conscious beings to harness archetypal energies for deliberate reality creation and spiritual transformation. Breaking free from archetypal imprisonment requires recognizing that these patterns exist within a multidimensional reality where consciousness operates according to both personal and transpersonal principles. Jung discovered that certain individuals could learn to consciously participate in archetypal energies without losing their individual identity, accessing the creative power of these ancient patterns while remaining free to choose how and when to engage with them. This process involves developing relationship with archetypes as living entities rather than abstract concepts, learning to communicate with them directly and negotiate conscious partnerships that serve both personal evolution and collective healing. When you master this level of archetypal consciousness, you gain access to the same creative forces that shamans, mystics, and initiated beings have used throughout history to shape reality according to conscious intention. This mastery opens the doorway to understanding how active imagination serves as, within the hidden archives of psychological discovery, Carl Jung uncovered an ancient practice that he termed active imagination, a powerful technique that bridges the gap between conscious awareness and the vast unconscious realms where dreams, visions, and creative inspiration originate. This practice, known to mystics and initiated beings throughout history by various names, involves consciously entering into dialogue with the images, figures, and symbolic content that emerges from the depths of the psyche, treating these inner experiences as real encounters with autonomous aspects of consciousness rather than mere fantasy or imagination. Jung realized that active imagination provided direct access to the same source of wisdom and creative power that inspired the great spiritual teachers, artists, and visionaries throughout human history, offering a practical method for accessing higher dimensional guidance and transformative insight in daily life. The practice of active imagination operates on the understanding that consciousness exists in multiple layers and dimensions, with the everyday thinking mind representing only the surface level of a vast ocean of awareness that extends far beyond personal identity and conditioned beliefs. When individuals learn to quiet the analytical mind and allow images, symbols, and inner figures to emerge spontaneously, they gain access to a realm of intelligence that operates according to principles beyond linear logic and rational understanding. This inner dimension contains what Jung called prospective information, insights and guidance about future possibilities and creative solutions that haven't yet manifested in physical reality. Ancient traditions recognized this capacity and developed elaborate practices for cultivating relationship with inner guides, power animals, and archetypal figures that could provide wisdom, healing, and practical guidance for navigating life's challenges. Jung discovered that active imagination serves as a form of inner alchemy, allowing individuals to consciously participate in the transformation of psychological and spiritual content rather than being passive victims of unconscious processes. Through regular practice of active imagination, people can establish conscious communication with their shadow aspects, anima or animus figures, and archetypal energies, creating internal dialogue that leads to integration and healing rather than projection and conflict. This practice represents a sophisticated form of energy manipulation where consciousness learns to work directly with the symbolic language of the psyche, translating abstract archetypal energies into practical wisdom and creative inspiration. The results often manifest as sudden insights, creative breakthroughs, or solutions to problems that seemed impossible to resolve through rational analysis alone. What makes active imagination particularly powerful for spiritual awakening and reality transformation is its capacity to bypass the limiting beliefs and conditioned patterns that normally filter and restrict our perception of what's possible. When consciousness learns to operate in the symbolic realm of active imagination, it gains access to creative solutions and transformative possibilities that exist beyond the constraints of three-dimensional thinking and collective programming. Jung found that individuals who mastered this practice could access what he called the transcendent function, a bridge between conscious and unconscious that generates entirely new possibilities beyond the limitations of either realm alone. This represents a form of consciousness technology that allows direct participation in the creative forces that shape reality at its source. The mastery of active imagination naturally leads to understanding how synchronicity operates as Carl Jung's discovery of synchronicity revealed one of the most profound secrets of how consciousness interacts with physical reality, demonstrating that meaningful coincidences serve as a sophisticated guidance system that connects inner psychological states with outer circumstances in ways that transcend conventional cause and effect relationships. These are causal connections where inner and outer events mirror each other through meaning rather than mechanical causation, represent evidence of what Jung called the unus mundus, the underlying unified field where psyche and matter participate in a single interconnected reality. When individuals learn to recognize and interpret synchronistic events, they gain access to a form of quantum spirituality that allows conscious navigation through life using the universe itself as a feedback system and guidance mechanism. Synchronicity operates as a language of symbols and meaningful connections that bypasses the rational mind's attempts to control and predict outcomes, offering instead a fluid, intuitive way of receiving information about the deeper currents of destiny and spiritual evolution. Jung observed that synchronistic events tend to cluster around periods of psychological transformation, appearing most frequently when individuals are undergoing significant life transitions, spiritual awakenings, or creative breakthroughs. These meaningful coincidences serve as confirmation that inner changes are aligning with larger patterns of possibility, providing encouragement and direction during times when rational planning and logical analysis prove inadequate for navigating complex life situations. Ancient wisdom traditions understood this principle and developed practices for cultivating receptivity to synchronistic guidance while maintaining discernment between genuine, meaningful connections and random coincidence. The capacity to recognize and work with synchronicity requires developing what Jung called symbolic attitude, a way of perceiving reality that recognizes the meaningful patterns and connections that exist beneath the surface appearance of separate events and circumstances. This involves learning to interpret the symbolic language through which the unconscious communicates with conscious awareness, treating external events as potential messages or reflections of internal psychological processes. Numbers, animals, natural phenomena, unexpected encounters, and even technical malfunctions can serve as synchronistic communications when approached with the proper awareness and interpretive skills. This represents a form of divination that doesn't rely on external tools or systems, but rather on developing sensitivity to the ongoing dialogue between consciousness and the living universe. Jung discovered that individuals who successfully integrate synchronicity into their worldview experience a fundamental shift from feeling separate and isolated to recognizing their participation in a larger web of meaning and connection that extends throughout all levels of reality. This awareness transforms decision-making from a process of struggle and forcing outcomes to one of attunement and collaborative creation with intelligence that operates beyond personal understanding. The practice of following synchronistic guidance requires courage to trust inner knowing over external logic, often leading individuals into unexpected opportunities and experiences that serve their deepest growth and creative expression. When synchronicity becomes a regular feature of conscious experience, it reveals the existence of what Jung called meaningful order operating throughout reality, an intelligence that coordinates inner and outer events according to principles that transcend material causation. This recognition opens the doorway to understanding how the transcendent function creates. At the pinnacle of Jung's psychological discoveries lies the transcendent function, a mysterious capacity within consciousness that emerges when opposing forces within the psyche are held in creative tension rather than resolved through one-sided solutions or premature integration. This function represents the psyche's natural ability to generate entirely new possibilities that transcend the limitations of either-or thinking, creating what Jung called the third that emerges from the dynamic relationship between thesis and antithesis. The transcendent function operates as a form of inner alchemy, where psychological opposites such as conscious and unconscious, masculine and feminine, light and shadow, combine to produce creative solutions and transformative insights that couldn't be achieved through rational analysis or forced resolution of conflict. Jung recognized that most psychological suffering and spiritual stagnation results from the ego's attempts to eliminate tension by choosing one side of an internal conflict while rejecting or suppressing the other, creating a state of psychological one-sidedness that cuts off access to the creative energy inherent in oppositional dynamics. The transcendent function emerges only when individuals develop the capacity to hold paradox without immediately rushing to resolve it, allowing the tension between opposites to generate new forms of awareness and creative possibility. This process requires what Jung called active patience, the ability to remain present with uncomfortable uncertainty while trusting that consciousness itself possesses the wisdom to generate solutions that honor the truth contained within all aspects of an internal conflict. The activation of the transcendent function represents a quantum leap in consciousness development, moving beyond the dualistic thinking that characterizes ordinary mental processes to access a form of paradoxical awareness that can simultaneously hold multiple perspectives without contradiction. This capacity allows individuals to navigate complex spiritual and psychological territories that cannot be understood through linear logic or conventional problem-solving approaches. Ancient mystery schools and esoteric traditions developed specific practices for cultivating the transcendent function, recognizing it as the key to achieving what they called the marriage of opposites, or the union of complementary forces that generate spiritual rebirth and creative illumination. When the transcendent function becomes consistently accessible, it transforms every aspect of life experience by providing a reliable method for generating creative solutions to seemingly impossible problems and accessing guidance that emerges from beyond personal knowledge and conditioning. This represents the culmination of Jung's work, demonstrating how psychological development naturally evolves toward increasing capacity for creative synthesis and innovative response to life's challenges. The transcendent function reveals consciousness as an inherently creative force, capable of generating new realities through the conscious integration of oppositional energies, offering unlimited potential for transformation and spiritual evolution. Mastery of this function represents the ultimate freedom from limiting beliefs and conditioned patterns, providing direct access to the creative intelligence that continuously shapes and reshapes reality according to conscious intention and unconscious. Wisdom working in harmonious collaboration. The profound wisdom that Carl Jung uncovered through his lifelong exploration of the human psyche reveals a truth that transforms everything. Your external reality is not something that happens to you, but something that emerges from the deepest layers of your unconscious mind through the mechanism of projection. When you finally understand that the one thing you must stop doing is unconsciously projecting your internal conflicts, unintegrated shadow aspects, and archetypal patterns onto the external world, you reclaim the creative power that has been scattered across countless circumstances and relationships throughout your entire life. This recognition doesn't require years of therapy or complex spiritual practices. It happens in an instant when you truly grasp that what you've been trying to change out there has always been an inside job. Jung's revolutionary discoveries about shadow integration, archetypal consciousness, and the transcendent function provide the practical tools for this profound shift from victim consciousness to creator consciousness. By withdrawing your projections and consciously integrating the disowned aspects of your psyche, you stop unconsciously creating the very experiences you claim to want to avoid, while simultaneously accessing the authentic creative power that emerges when internal opposites unite in conscious harmony. This represents the ultimate spiritual liberation. Freedom from the invisible patterns and programming that have been running your life from behind the scenes, creating the illusion of limitation while your true nature possesses unlimited capacity for conscious reality creation. The journey through unconscious projection, shadow work, collective programming, and archetypal integration leads inevitably to the activation of what Jung called the transcendent function, where consciousness itself becomes a creative force capable of generating entirely new possibilities beyond the constraints of conditioned thinking and inherited limitation. This is where ancient wisdom meets modern psychology, where spiritual awakening becomes practical transformation, and where the mysterious forces that govern human experience reveal themselves as allies in your conscious evolution, rather than obstacles to overcome. The moment you stop unconsciously projecting your internal world onto external circumstances and begin consciously working with the creative forces within your own psyche, reality shifts instantly because you're finally addressing the source rather than endlessly trying to manipulate effects. This is Jung's greatest gift to humanity: the recognition that we are not victims of circumstance, but conscious participants in an ongoing creative process that responds immediately to changes in our internal psychological structure. If this exploration of Jung's profound insights has opened new doorways of understanding for you, please subscribe to continue this journey into the hidden dimensions of consciousness and reality creation. Comment below and let me know which part of Jung's teachings surprised you the most or created the biggest shift in your understanding. Your next step in this transformative journey awaits in the video appearing on your screen right now.